The Danger of the Single Story, EDOL 722, Assignment 3.1. Like many of my colleagues, Adiji's TED Talk made an impression on me. As a person of color, I too have had experiences of others making sense of me through their single story about people who look like me. This is my story. I'm an American, second generation. My father was a Mexican immigrant from Michoacan, Mexico, who was fortunate enough to have been an apprentice in an auto body shop in Fresno, and who eventually became a small business owner, having his own auto body shop in the Central Valley. My mother was an American born Latina of Peruvian and Mexican ancestry. I was born in Fresno. My family moved to Santa Rosa in Northern California when I was 2. I grew up in a working middle class family who were proudly Mexican and American. I always recall my household being bilingual, speaking English and Spanish, and I consider myself to have grown up in a typical Mexican American household. But you be the judge, because what is a Mexican American household? And what's typical? I was one of 5 sisters in a family with a strict Mexican father who probably would have preferred us to be nuns. On the other hand, I had a Chicana mom, politically active Mexican American mother, who came alive in the 60s and 70s with her progressive ideas, especially her idea of woman power, since she had 5 little girls at home. She did all within her power to make sure we did well in school and that we were all community oriented. I remember sitting with her around the age of 12, writing letters to our congressman to keep funding alive for nonprofit organizations so that they could continue to help the poor. I remember taking a bite into what I thought was a cupcake, only to get a mouthful of bran muffin. Yuck. I remember her taking us girls to our ballet folclórico mexicano lessons, as well as my ballet and tap dance classes. I grew up eating casseroles and salads, as well as homemade Mexican food. Yum. Interestingly, there were even some Mexican foods I did not know of until I was in college and even beyond, like capirotada, horchata, and atole. You see, at first glance, people might see me, brown skin, black hair, indigenous features, and through their single story of Latinos or Mexicans, might assume that I like spicy food, that I speak Spanish, that I was born in Mexico, and that I'm a Catholic. My truth is, I couldn't stand hot, spicy food at all. Actually, until the day that I was pregnant, all of a sudden I had a craving for spicy food, which I can now eat, but it has to be very mild. I also do speak Spanish and English. I'm actually bilingual. I was not born in Mexico. I'm a native Californian, but I have visited and vacationed there. Also, I'm not a Catholic. I'm a non denominational Christian. In fact, my grandfather was a pastor. California has a reputation of being progressive and open minded about people and cultures. And Mexicans and Latinos are not new to California. In fact, our ancestors were here and meshed with Native Americans before this was even considered America. Therefore, given this long standing existence, I'm a little surprised when stereotypes are applied to me. Let me give you 3 examples. The salsa incident. When I was a school psychologist, my secretary came into my office and handed me a small baggie full of cherry tomatoes and said, "Here, these are for you, 'cause you know how you people like to make salsa." I thanked her and she immediately left. I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. She was operating based on her single story of Mexican people, and in her story, all Mexican people eat salsa and know how to make it with cherry tomatoes. Then there's the GRE incident. I was considering a graduate program, so I was in the public library with my thick graduate record examination book and related study materials, studying for my upcoming test. A woman sat at my table and, after looking at the books that surrounded me, said to me, "Did you already get a bachelor's degree in Mexico?" Clearly, in her single story, people who looked like me had to be born in Mexico. I must admit that I used that opportunity to give her a couple of lessons on American history, ethnic studies, and race relations. Needless to mention, she quickly left my table. Finally, there was the Costco incident. I was in line to pay at Costco a couple of years ago. The person who was boxing the items was asking each customer, "Will you need boxes or just leave items in the cart?" When it was my turn, he asked me in broken Spanish, "Necesitas cajas o dejo en la carreta?" I was surprised. Thankfully, I'm bilingual, so I knew what he was trying to ask, and I could have easily responded in Spanish if he was using the language that was easiest for him or most comfortable for him. But he was using Spanish with me because his single story told him that a brown person that looks Mexican does not speak English. Needless to mention, I thanked him for showing me that he knows Spanish and that it was impressive that he wanted to show off his skills to me, but that it would be more time efficient if he just used the language we both spoke, English. Then I asked him, "Or you weren't making assumptions about me because of how I look, were you?" Of course, he just turned beet red. Thank you for listening to my story. In her TED Talk, Adichie talks about the danger of stereotypes not being that they are untrue, but that they don't tell the full story. I agree. Thank you for sharing yours as well. Thanks.